Thinking about starting your own podcast? Think it's a good idea that you try Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. And Anchor gives you everything you need in one place. And the best part is that it's free. And the other best part is you can use it right from your phone or your computer. And I've been using it from my phone this entire time. Creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it really sounds great. They'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere. And when I mean everywhere, I mean Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can easily make money from your podcast, and there's no minimum listenership. So, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hey guys, today I thought it would be a good idea to start on a new topic, a new area that I have not touched on very much. So, as I have mentioned before, and if you guys don't already know me, my name's Katie Welty. I went to school for psychology, got my master's degree in ABA, which if you don't know what ABA is, it's a data-driven and mental behavior and behaviors, problematic behaviors. It teaches socially significant behaviors so that kids are more functional in society. So to put that in more layman's terms, basically what ABA does is we work on things such as, brushing our teeth, brushing our hair, to working on behaviors, learning positive and negative reinforcement. So learning, the good and the bad of each day, knowing, right from wrong, teaching kids how to tie their shoes, go to the bathroom. There's a lot of different things that ABA does, and it's not just specific to ABA. This is also done in other behavioral type therapies, like psychosocial therapy is another thing that a lot of those who suffer from difficulties with functioning in society, this is what this is meant for. Now, I do have a lot of parents and a lot of people who, don't quite understand ABA, or maybe they, their kid can't qualify for a lot of reasons. A lot of kids can't qualify because their parents have, private insurance, and because they have private insurance, it's hard to pay for those services. And, maybe some kids don't qualify for Medicaid because of that. A lot of the time, a lot of these services are revolved around Medicaid. And even if you did have private insurance, paying the copay and paying for the service is really, really expensive. So I wanted to come on here, and before I go right into my topic, one of the big things that I want to tell you guys is I went to school, I got educated, but there's one final piece that, when you go in the education for ABA, there's a final piece where you have to take a test, and you have to take this test, and it's supposed to prove your competency of ABA. Well, this is the thing. I felt like taking that test was not going to prove my competency in this topic, and I am very, very, very confident in what I say, very confident in giving advice to people and providing any feedback that people have. So I just want to say from the very get-go, I'm not a BCBA, although I have worked with many different ages of children who not only, they haven't just had autism, they've had traumatic brain injuries. Some kids maybe just have behavioral problems. We all, or whatever you want to, consider. Some people don't even like to say their kid has autism, and it's okay. You don't have to say that they have it. Or ADHD, or, not even putting a label on it at all. My kid just thinks differently than everybody else, just like one person from the next person. We all think differently, we have to keep that in mind. Putting a label on your kid isn't going to, it doesn't make anything really different. It makes it harder for them to think that they can't get past that label. So it's good. That's why you'll hear me. Sorry that I'm going ranting on here a little bit, but I just want to let you guys know, that I'm not a BCBA. Although I'm very confident when I tell you everything that comes out of my mouth is merely from experience or things that I've experienced myself as a human being, and knowing that, I just want you guys to all understand. Like I said, we're all different. We all think differently, and different things are going to work for each and every one of us. Um, okay, so one of the biggest struggles that I know a lot of kids, some kids can have, is the self-injurious behavior. So self-injurious behavior is, this is where you see a kid purposely, hitting himself, biting himself, his or her, um, her pulling her hair, kneeing herself in the head, smacking their head on the wall, trying to cut themselves, trying to, they pick their nails so much that their nails are bleeding. They bang their head so hard that they make their nose bleed, or they break their nose. They're punching things so hard that they're breaking their bones. So this is very, I'm going to be very real with you guys on these topics. I'm going to be very honest about, the experiences that I've had and what parents have told me and things that I've seen. This is a very difficult behavior to see a person engage in. And typically, or in most cases, this will happen with those that are, you know, supposedly, or not supposedly, but can be, diagnosed with a certain disability. And although this does happen often, in these cases, some of us may be influenced by the environmental factors: aggression, hate in the home, abuse, neglect, or maybe it's just anxieties. That's just a way that they found to self-soothe themselves, creating for some what we call self-doubt, or not believing in the person we once thought we were. So that, what I mean by that is, like, let's say that person, that they're very confident in themselves, and they've gone majority of their life without, engaging in any of this behavior, but then all of a sudden they have environmental change. Or, like, let's say mom walks out of the picture, dad walks out of the picture, and then these new anxieties kind of come up, and that can be something that they can, resort to. And when this behavior does occur, you could witness, like I said, head banging, biting, possible scratching, hair pulling, nail biting. There's even, like I said, I'm being very real with you, some like rough masturbation without any lubrication, or using the wrong lubrication. These are all related to, like I said before, the environmental factors that I've mentioned. And with there's a lot more research that needs to be done in some of these areas, to where exactly this stuff does come from. But I can just tell for you, from me, from experience, that is the majority of the time where this stuff does end up coming from. In different cases, so what tools I have used, and what I think I can't use while in the work. So, and there's things that I can't, okay, so in the ABA world, there's a lot of rules and everything, and I'm sure all of you guys know this, but one of the biggest things is you can't use punishment. Well, punishment technically is a part of ABA, and putting in, the punishment in place, which technically, so punishment could mean taking something away and not giving it back, or maybe having a consequence. So this person, makes a mess, and now they have to pick up their toys. This is considered punishment. This is considered, a response cost type of thing. But in all reality, when we're talking about some self-injurious behavior, sometimes a natural consequence or a punishment procedure is the best way for them to stop doing this. So, for example, your kid, and this might not work for all. I am in no way, shape, or form saying that this is going to work for every single kiddo. But a lot of the time, when you restrict the access to the body part or the wall or any of the like hard items that could create damage. So, for example, we can find something as a replacement. So, if this person really, really likes to hit their hard again, their head hard against the wall, first we need to figure out, okay, why are they hitting their head against the wall? Are they hitting their head against the wall because they like that feeling of that pressure of their head, you know what I mean, of them constantly getting that pressure on their head? So something you could teach them is to bang their head on a pillow, or you know what I mean, if you're finding that, they just need that sort of sensory, then you let them hit their head on a pillow. And if that is not good enough for them, then maybe they need the sensory input, or they need it somewhere else. So maybe get them a punching bag and let them punch that and see if that works for them, to see if they can still get that same kind of feeling. Because, like I said, a lot of the time, they're doing it to get some sort of relief or some sort of feeling from it. And that's not even a punishment procedure, but another punishment procedure would just giving them like a timeout, having them sit in the corner. Oh, you decided that, you hit your head too against the wall because I told you no about something. Okay, so you need to have a timeout. And that could be a way for them to understand that that's not a good thing for them to do. And then sometimes restricting them from not even doing it at all um, can actually make things worse. So like if you're restricting them from getting that sort of that input that they need, like if they are pulling their hair, what's something that you could have them else do? Maybe they need, this is a really random example, but maybe you have a plant and you let them pick the plant out, you know what I mean? So they have that feeling of like pulling something. Um, or maybe you put something really disgusting on their fingernails or on their mouth so that they don't have the desire, that's kind of a punishment procedure. You're putting something in there so that they have the negative effect of putting their fingers in their mouth or putting anything near their mouth. And that's a good way, like I said, to help with the hands. And then restriction can sometimes be beneficial, but not for those who have the traumatic experience. So past, present, and then, what's happened, in their past. Like, did they have somebody, when they, like, let's say, for example, they banged their head against the wall and then they got their butt spanked, and now, they're afraid that you touch that. Every time they do that, they get afraid if you come near them, and then they start acting aggressive because you come near them, and that's their way of coping with things. Too much negativity. And then, you know, you want to think about, and I mentioned, the positive and the negative reinforcement. So a really good way, so for example, I'll just tell you guys the experiences that I've had with some self-injurious behavior. So one of the first self-injurious behavior that I had to deal with was a kiddo that was consistently smacking his head up against, or his hand up against his head, and he was smacking his head super hard because he felt that it was a way to like punish himself, because in his environment and in his home, he was brought up to think that punishment was the only answer. So because he didn't answer a question right, or because he didn't complete this task right, that hitting himself in the head was the right thing to do. Like, oh, I'll just punish myself. And, even though my kiddo never officially stopped doing this, there was something that always worked for him. And a lot of the time, it was when we continuously praised him for all the good things that he was doing. And, we saw less and less of it. And then we told him, like, hey, instead of doing that, like, snap your fingers, slam your hands down on the ground, stomp your feet really hard. And, and a lot of the time, or majority of the time, that would happen. But he wasn't getting that at home. He wasn't getting that reinforcement at home. Oh, good job for not hitting your, for not, I'm sorry, not, good job for snapping your fingers, like good job for clapping your hands or stopping your feet. You're using something different for yourself. But he got so much attention for it at home, like his dad saw him doing it, and his dad, oh, just don't do that, don't do that, rather than giving him an alternative, for something else for him to do. he continually got that negativity at home. So it was hard for him to replace that behavior because he was so worked up and had so much negativity at home that that was what he thought was the best thing for him to do. And then the other self-injurious behavior that I had was a kiddo biting, was somebody biting themselves. And she would bite herself, when she was extremely upset, and she would bite herself. She wouldn't bite anybody else, but she would always bite herself. And she thought, and it was a way for her to get attention. So instead of her, trying to get her, or instead of her kicking or screaming, it was more like, oh no, I'm gonna bite myself so that you give me attention and you make me stop. You know what I mean? You're not paying attention to what I actually just like what got me into an issue, like what caused that person to become angry in the first place. So one of the things that would make her angry is that, we would ask her to sit down and complete a task. And instead of doing that, she'd push the table and then she would bite herself and then she would expect you to look at her and give her some sort of attention. Well, we started to, and this, like I said, this can happen for some kids and it can work for some kids and it won't work, and it will and it won't work. And like I said, it might work for one, it might work for two, it might work for 50, it might work for none. Um, but one of the things that I had her do, we started ignoring the behavior. We started realizing that she was doing it for attention. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to even pay attention to you for doing that. Now, if she was starting to draw blood consistently, then, obviously you have to block the behavior, but we tried to ignore it as much as we possibly could. And the less and less attention that we gave to her biting herself, the less and less that she started to do it. And every time she did something different, so like let's say every time she slammed her hand down on the ground or she got up and she stomped her feet, we praised her for that. We said, "Oh, good you," and then she was like, "Oh my gosh, like they want," you know what I mean? They're paying attention to these other things, and it kind of like made her forget about the fact that she was biting herself. Um, and then let's see, another instance was a girl slamming her head against her knee. And one of the first things we did was, and this was even an environmental thing, which is kind of cool. Not cool, but it's different for, different parents out there. So one of her things was, you know, you evaluate her environment. So you see, okay, what she's in, how many times she's been here, what's different, what's changed, what's the same. And we found that she legit just hated being at the center. She legit hated being at the ABA center and she did not want to have anything to do with it. Because as soon as we took her out of there, there was literally no self-injurious behavior whatsoever. She wasn't banging her head on her knee. She was still falling to the ground, but it was no like self-injurious behavior. It was nothing that wasn't easy to manage. And even when she did do it, like back at the center, we'd put our hand there, and if you didn't give her any attention, she would stop and she'd resort to screaming, which is actually better than her hitting her head on her knee, I'm sure anybody could agree with me on that one. Now, there are times when you have somebody who is extremely, extremely self-injurious, and this could be from, not even being able to communicate. You'll find extreme cases where these kids can't communicate, so them, smacking themselves in their head is just them showing like, I'm freaking frustrated, you know what I mean? Like, I need to tell you guys that I'm frustrated. And, there's the cases where they do it so bad that they really, really hurt themselves. And, and that there might be points, and I want parents to know that it's okay. You might have to do some very restrictive things with your kids. You might have to put a helmet at them for them to learn. You might, and it's gonna be considered punishment for them, but they're gonna learn that like, I can't be hitting my head like this because then I'm gonna have to wear this big huge honking thing on my head, and no kid wants to have to go through that. No kid wants to wear that. Or you might find that maybe that pressure of that helmet or something on their head actually gives them a relief and they don't need to bang their head anymore. You find that, oh, just because of having that on their head, it's always going to be a trial and error. And the only reason I'm still, like I said, I'm going to keep talking about different topics, but like with the self-injurious behavior, you really have to you have to really look at their environmental factors, and you have to look at their sensory needs. A lot of kids have different sensory needs, and they have them to be met in different areas. And I just want you guys to know that sometimes punishing your kid might be the only option that you have, but also providing the reinforcement every time they don't engage in that bad behavior, that self-injurious behavior that causes them harm. You tell them, oh, you're doing great for doing this. You don't say, oh, good job not hitting your head, or oh, hey, good job not trying to bite your skin off your nails, or you know what I mean, not trying to cut yourself or whatever it is. I'm not saying that that's a very common thing, but some for them to draw blood on themselves. And you don't want to give attention to that behavior that you don't want to see anymore. So if you have a kiddo that's doing something that's continuous, that's just really bad, and I can't account for everything because I haven't seen it all. And by no means am I saying it easy, and by no means am I saying it's not going to take work, and it's not going to take heartbreak and struggle and things like that, because I know that it's not easy, and I know that there are so many, I just want parents to know that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do everything like everybody wants you to do it. You do what you think is best for your child, and you do what you think is best for that person, when they do grow up and they become an adult, because you want nothing for your kid to grow up and be functional in society. And that's exactly what, technically what an ABA does, or like psychosocial therapy, all those kinds of therapies that provide that functionality for kids in society. So, like I said, and for the parents that are listening to this, or for people who do listen to this, it's okay. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to try something new every single day. Always try, always try something new. You never know if it's going to work, whether it's punishment or it's constant positive reinforcement. Because if you think about it, if you're constantly telling a kid to not do something, then you're constantly reminding them that they are doing it. You're constantly you're constantly putting it out there that they are engaging in this behavior. They are acting this way, rather than focusing on, okay, I see that you are sitting down at the table right now. Oh my gosh, great job sitting down at the table, rather than, oh, you're throwing your food everywhere. Like, oh yeah, they are going to throw their food everywhere, because they see that. Or trying to shove things down their throat to make you choke because they're getting attention from it. You have to remember, they're getting so much attention for that bad behavior that they realize, you know, they realize that it's something that they're doing. So they're like, oh, hey, my mom or dad or my cousin or aunt or whoever the guardian is, they're giving me attention for acting like this, when maybe they're not getting attention for other things. And this becomes another environmental factor. This is another, oh, I'm not getting the attention that I need, because every kid's going to need attention at some point in their life, and every kid wants their mom or dad. It's just how life goes. It doesn't necessarily that they want them for comfort, but they want them to give them some sort of attention in some way. And the only reason that I specifically brought up the SIB, the self-interest behavior, is because it's a very common thing for a lot of kids who are struggling with, and it might be a biological factor. Like I said, the sensory needs, the physical needs, maybe they're doing it because their body is physically needs some sort of input from something, and that's where, again, like I said, you have to do some trial and error stuff. You have to figure out what it is what pressure that they need. Maybe they need pressure from other parts of their body. And like I said, it can be work, but you also have to know that if you're going to have somebody come in and help you, that you also have to do it with them. You also have to put in that 24/7 effort that and I give credit to so many parents out there that are living this life on a day-to-day basis, and they have to deal with this stuff continuously. My heart and soul goes out to people like that, and I really, really hope that, this podcast that I'm starting and in these conversations that I'm having with people, I'm hoping that people, can know like you're not alone and you always have people on your side. And you know what I mean? And I can do anything I can to help these people. And I think it's important for all of us to be very supportive of those, you know what I mean, of those who have kids that engage in this self-injurious behavior, because, there's a lot of the time that parents don't even want to go out in public because, their kids are engaging in this behavior and they're embarrassed. And it doesn't have anything to do with them not wanting to take their kids out in public, or them not, they would love for anything to be able to take their kid to the store and have them sit in the cart. A lot of people don't think about that, and then when they do take their kid, they have people staring at them. And, and that's in my hopes is that when I talk about these things, that these parents can either utilize some of the techniques that I have, or maybe feel a little bit more comfort in knowing that, it's okay to do certain things that you feel need to be done for your kid. And, don't feel ashamed or don't feel guilt or whatever it is that you might feel when you're just doing the best that you can. And I have a lot of topics that I want to talk about, and I just want people to be open-minded and remember that we were not born to fit in, we were born to stand out.